Good evening, welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free, coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always, we'd encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website and check out our forums and articles for all your latest Rangers news and discussions. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel, and we'd ask that you continue to share the pod on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guests for tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and for more information on that, please email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest for tonight. Firstly, Iain Duff. Iain, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, yeah. Bit more positive than in recent weeks, days, months.
Yeah, well, I suppose a Rangers win always helps that. And also joining us, John McCallum. John, how's things?
I'm not bad, thanks. Those with the cold. I'll be muting all the way through as I sneeze and splut all the way through this. But it is just a cold. It's nothing more serious than that. Nothing that can be passed virtually.
Glad to hear it. Hopefully the Rangers win earlier on today. Cheered you up a bit?
Ever so slightly.
Right, there's obviously plenty to discuss tonight, guys, with the game earlier on and everything else around the club. We'll start with, obviously, the game against St Mirren. Nice 3-1 win.
I think we won 3-0.
Sorry, 3-0. We did win. I'm giving St Mirren a goal that they did not score.
You've got to assume that would be the case, wouldn't you, really?
I think I just expected us to concede at this point, but good spot there, John. Yes, we won 3-0. First thing I'll do is, I'm coming to you first on this, John, is just your thoughts on the performance overall. For me, I thought still wasn't great, but at this point in time, a win's all that matters.
Yeah, aspects of it, I think, maybe we flattered to deceive a little bit. I mean, look, we were the better team. I think it was a deserved victory. We still, at times, huffed and puffed and knocked the ball sideways and just lacked a bit of energy. And, so it was still far from the kind of performance you wanted, but, it's a clean sheet and 3 goals. I think there was a few of us get into this game with some trepidation. So, come 2 o'clock today, I was very pleased to have the 3 points. At times, at times we played okay. A couple of times, Raskin decided to run from midfield forwards, which was novel. I didn't know we had any midfielders who knew how to do that anymore. So yeah, it was nice, and occasionally it caused them problems. Let's be honest, I think them going down to 10 men, and then getting the penalty clearly settled us. Obviously changed the shape and the flow of the game. Up until that point, I think we were the better team, but St Mirren, I think, were probably giving us as much as we were giving them at that point. Neither team really created many clear-cut chances prior to that. Overall, I think what's been a pretty bad week, it was a good ending to a bad week. Probably a better result than I expected, if I'm being entirely honest with you.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same in terms of getting it with a bit of trepidation. Iain, I'll get your take on the team selection. I thought it was a fairly bold move on Davis's part to bring in Zach Lovely, so I thought did really well up until he unfortunately got injured. But what does it say about, what did you make of his performance, and also what does it say about where we're at with this squad? The fact that, we've had this big overhaul of the attacking options in the summer, and our 2 kind of main fit attacking options in Dessers and Lammers were both left on the bench for a 17-year-old youth player.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Lovely's played really well up to the point where he got injured, and you do wonder what we've done to deserve this curse that seems to be hitting the team this season. Seems to be, you never know whether it's when you're playing badly you get a lot of injuries, or whether you're playing badly because you've got a lot of injuries. Sometimes I think it works both ways, but just unlucky for him. But he did look promising for when he was on. He was obviously involved in the move that resulted in the penalty. So that was a shame to see him going. But in terms of a message, I mean, I think it was pretty clear message really from Steve Davis to these 2 guys, because ostensibly this is like we're playing against a team that's second place, so it's a must-win game. And in a must-win game, he's gone for basically untried forward in favour instead of these two experienced big money signings. Not only that, but when Lovelace went off injured, your automatic assumption would be that one of those two would come on, probably Dessers, and they didn't. So at that point, you're then thinking, well, this is he's made a definite conscious decision here to send them a message to say, look, you guys aren't cutting it, and we're going to go for these youngsters. So, fair play, and you could argue that it paid off. I think, as I say, Lovelace did well, and his replacement did pretty well as well. So, it's good to see. I think that was probably, I wouldn't have wanted to see wholesale changes in terms of throwing a whole load of young lads on, because I think, that's just not fair to them. You're basically throwing them under a bus in some ways. If it goes badly, then that could be, affect them for the long term. So it was the right way to do it, to bring one or two on and give a couple others a chance later on in the game as well.
Yeah, Johnny, you mentioned there that he wouldn't have wanted to see kind of wholesale changes with the youngsters brought in. There was quite a few fans online, actively calling for that, in terms of guys like Tav, Goldson, Barisic, Lundstrom all be dropped and then youngsters brought in. Did you ever think that was realistic? I kind of didn't expect that. I think Iain's kind of hit the nail on the head there when he said that you're kind of throwing them into a bit of a really difficult situation. So I never expected him to bring in that many youngsters, but I thought he handled it in the right way. What were you expecting in terms of the team lineup?
I was actually expecting McCausland to start. I thought he did enough in his kind of 15-minute cameo on Thursday night to want a start, and I was a little surprised that he didn't start, but Lovelace came in. And I was pleased when he came off the bench, because I thought he did quite well when he came on. The thing about McCausland is he's 20, so he's inexperienced. He hasn't played a lot of first team football for anyone, but he's not 17. This is a kind of make or break season for McCausland. He either breaks into the team or he leaves, I think, next summer. So it was interesting seeing him. He's quite slightly built for a professional football player these days. He is quite slightly built. I wondered if that might be an issue for him in the future. But let's wait and see. I thought both of them took their chances. In terms of wholesale changes, I didn't think there was any chance that was going to happen. I'm a defender of Tavernier. I think he's a player who we take for granted in many ways. However, on Thursday night he was appalling, and he wasn't the only one. I mean, Thursday night was just such an abysmal performance from start to finish. If he had been dropped, I don't think he could have complained. I didn't think it was going to happen for a variety of reasons. I didn't think it was going to happen. I think the main one being, why would Steve Davis? Steve Davis is going back to being his teammate now. I don't know if Steve Davis will ever play again, but I couldn't see him destroying a friendship with Goldson and with Tavernier and Barisic over this. I couldn't see that happening. And I think it was the right decision. I think that level of wholesale changes just wasn't going to happen. This was a must-win game, and it's fine bringing in 2 or 3 youngsters, but I think wholesale changes to your entire defence would just. Online fans are maybe not always the people to listen to, and I include myself in that. There are times we just want to burn the whole place down. Fortunately, saner minds perhaps prevail. So no, I didn't think that was logical. I didn't think that was likely to happen. As I said, my only surprise was that McCausland didn't start and Lovelace did. I thought McCausland had done enough to want to start, but I don't know. Perhaps he'd taken a knock or something during the week. Perhaps he wasn't fit for a full 90. I really don't know. Either way, it worked out.
Yeah, I thought he handled it well in terms of the change that he did make.
And to be fair, sorry, I've jumped in and told you. To be fair, he did change the defence. Obviously, Davies was dropped and Suter brought back in, so he did make a change in defence.
Yeah, yep. I thought Suter did pretty well, to be fair. I thought, for what he did have to do, although I don't think we had much to do for obvious reasons when they went down to 10 men, I thought Suter handled the game pretty well when he came back in.
I actually think Suter's been not our worst defender this season. I mean, I know he's had a couple of howlers, and that's probably what's gone against him more than anything. But to be honest, I've thought he's looked okay. In the context that everybody has been pretty awful, he's been slightly better than some of the others. So I don't think he's been our worst. So I was quite glad to see him back in. Again, I thought he did fine when he was on.
Yeah, I think he brings an interesting dynamic to that defence in terms of he's got that capability to carry the ball, which I don't think many of our other defenders do. And he's also got that thing that Goldson's also got where he can switch the play quite well. So I think he brings a kind of interesting option in terms of playing the ball out from the back. So I was kind of glad to see him back and thought he did well. I'll come to you in the next point, Iain, is the kind of major talking point from the game was the penalty incident and the sending off. Now, for me, it was correct decision. I don't see how anyone can look at that and come to any other conclusion. My main point on it I wanted to ask was about VAR. Was that an example of kind of VAR working correctly and how VAR should work? In terms of, I'm not convinced that gets given if VAR's not in play.
Well, it wasn't, was it? So it probably wouldn't have been given. I mean, I've made no secret of the fact that I just don't like VAR, and nothing's going to change my mind on that. I just feel that it changes the whole dynamic of the game, and I just don't like the way it does it. And even if we hadn't got that as a result of it not existing, we hadn't got that penalty today, then so be it. That's just the way it is, because other occasions where it goes in our favour. So on that count, VAR, yeah, it worked, but I mean, I'm still not a fan. I mean, like you, I mean, I thought it was a Stonewall penalty. I don't know. I was quite surprised it took him so long to actually come to a decision on it. I mean, the referee, I suppose, he's got to think about all the flag that he's going to get for giving that penalty. So he's got to be 100% sure in his own mind, the ref. But it looked, as soon as I saw it, I mean, there was something about it when I saw it the first time in real time that didn't look right. I didn't see it, the handball in the first instance, but the first replay I saw, it was quite clear it was handball. So why it took him that length of time is a bit of a mystery. But yeah, it was a Stonewall penalty. In terms of a red card, I don't really know what the rules are. I mean, like everybody else, I'm just totally lost by what the rules are these days. But I mean, it looked to me as if he was denying a clear goal scoring chance and made no attempt to play the ball normally. So I think that is what results in a red card. So in that case, it was the right decision.
Yeah, I didn't have any complaints with the decision. I thought it was a clear Stonewaller. I'll come to you on the VAR point, John. What's your thoughts on VAR? Are you a fan, or are you much like Iain and you prefer the game without it?
Yeah, no, I hate VAR. I would bin VAR tomorrow. I think it brings nothing to the game. It's funny, I don't know if there's a generational aspect to this, if there's also an element of being at the game as opposed to watching it on TV. If you're at the game, I just find VAR horrific. You've no clue what's going on. And that annoys me. In England, the television companies can make the argument in England because they plough, billions of pounds into the game down there. So they can make the claim, oh, you know what, we get to call the shots because we put all the money in. They don't get to make that claim here. In the end, but that's not how it works in Scotland. The television companies give us a pittance, and frankly, they should be chased for their lives. If they want to ruin the enjoyment of football, then they should have to pay us an awful lot more than they are. So no, I hate VAR. The fact it was correct today, as Iain says, it's not always. But it just annoys me. And I think it might be a generational thing. I might just be becoming. I'm getting to that age. I'm probably well past that age.
We're old, mate.
Yeah, but things annoy me now. Irrational things annoy me. Somebody's changing something that annoys me. And VAR is definitely something that annoys me. But as I said, it's a generational thing. I talk to my sons, and my sons look at me like, why would you not want the right decision? Like, well, you don't understand. Sometimes the wrong decision makes me happy too, or it makes me angry forever, And that's just part of football, I think it's a spontaneity of it. And you can have a big talk about, we could get into some depth about VAR and what that says about society and society's desire to have every single thing correct. You know what? I think it was Klopp that said football's the most important of the unimportant things. And I kind of feel that way, in the end, I want the team to do well. You want the referee to get decisions right, but you know what? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just make horrendous decisions, and you just, gives us something to talk about.
The thing I really don't like about it is that you can't really celebrate a goal anymore because you're always in the back of your head wondering, oh, is that going to get chopped off? Is there going to be something that nobody in the stadium's seen, but when you go over it on the video and slow it down, they'll maybe see a tug of a shirt or something like that nobody else has seen and chop it off. That's
ironically, that boy today would probably get away with that because I don't think the ref saw it. It was actually quite impressive. It was quite a nice wee, just knocked it off. So Seema just, you admire that level of deceit. You admire somebody who can. I think he's practiced that. I think that's a move. He's done that before.
Yeah. Because I remember it was the goal that Roof scored in the Old Firm game, and I remember my dad was celebrating, and he said to me, "They'll not take that one off us because they disallowed the one previously for offside." And I turned around to him and I said, "Don't be so sure about that." And then they ended up did take him off because I always had in the back of my head, even when celebrating that goal, I always had it in the back of my head. There's a chance that's going to get chopped off because of VAR. That's the one thing I don't like about it is just it takes away from the celebrating the goal.
Well, it's one of the many things I don't like about it. And I suppose the only good thing about it is, in some ways, is the opposite's true as well, isn't it? So there's always that chance if you have conceded a goal, maybe there was something happened. They'll disallow it. You never know. Never happens, mind you. That seems to be.
It doesn't seem to go in our favour anyway a lot of the time, or it feels like that at the moment anyway. But yeah, I guess it's here to stay. We just need to live with it. But I'm kind of on the fence about it, and I kind of chop and change, but. There's a bit of me that just feels the way it was.
Brian. I would have thought you would have been, you're a digital generation. You're a guy who's had TV at football. I would have thought you'd be.
I am, but also I don't like the fact that they spend, eons going over decisions that look pretty straightforward to me. They spend, was it the one during the week, the Dessers one where he scored and it looked clearly offside, but they spent about 5 minutes and it gave you that false hope of, I remember sitting thinking, he's going to give this, because they spent so long reviewing it.
Dessers had scored it. You knew he was offside. You didn't need VAR to tell you he was offside. Of course he was offside.
Oh yeah, and at times they spend too long reviewing things when it's clear to the eye that what the decision should be, but then you obviously get the one in the Liverpool game last weekend when they were that desperate to get it over and done quickly that they came to the wrong decision. So I think we just need to accept no system they introduced is going to be perfect. They're never going to iron out every error in football because it's a human game.
Why try? That's the point. Don't even bother trying. You can't do it. Just don't bother. Anyway, said it before.
I take your point. Right, moving on. I wanted to talk about a couple of performers on the day. First one I wanted to come to you, and I come to you on this one, Iain, because I think John had said previously he's a Tav defender, so I'll come at you on this one. Tavernier's taken a lot of criticism recent weeks for both his performances and his captaincy. I thought he did well today, but I'm not sure that's going to absolve him of all the criticism he's taken recently. There's been a lot of fans suggesting that the new manager's first job should be to take the armband off him. Do you think that's justified, or do you think some of the criticism's been a bit over the top?
I mean, all the criticism, well, not all the criticism, but the criticism has been over the top. There's no question about that. I'm generally a fan of Tavernier as well. I don't think you can, you can criticise elements of his performances. I don't think you can criticise what he's contributed over the last however many years he's been with his. Even today, he scores 2 goals, and it's quite easy to forget how many important goals he scored. He stepped up to, people say, oh, they're all penalties. Well, you've got to score them. He's up there. There's a lot of pressure on him. He's scored penalties in massive games for us over in Europe and domestically over the last few seasons. He's stepped up and he scored those goals and done what he had to do. So, I'm not defending him to the hilt because he's not had a great season, but he's not the only one by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not sure that his longer term future is secure at Rangers. I don't know whether we should be looking elsewhere in the longer term, maybe the end of the season or towards the next season or whatever. But at the moment, who's better? Who's better in that position? We've thrown a young guy in at that right back who, is totally unproven, and I haven't seen anything in any of the games that he's played that would suggest to me that he's better than Tavernier at any point. Who would be a better captain? I'm not sure that anybody on the pitch today would have stood out to me as being the standout choice. Maybe the goalkeeper, perhaps, I suppose, but that's about the only one. So, no, I don't think, if I was coming in as the manager, I don't think I would take the captaincy off him. For a start, he's obviously popular amongst the players. Now, you could argue that's a negative thing, the way the players have been, but the last thing you want to do when you come in as a new manager is to totally alienate the players you've got, because they are the players you've got. You've got to have them on your side. You want to get the best out of them. You don't want to start, getting their backs up against you and resenting the fact that their pal's been probably stripped of his captaincy. So there's lots of reasons why I wouldn't take the captaincy off him, but probably the main one is that there's no real obvious candidate that would take the job anyway. So I think it's not something that's going to happen.
John, I'd heard the suggestion that perhaps taking the armband off of Tav might actually improve his own performance by taking that captaincy responsibility away from him. I'd heard that kind of compared to that happened to Amoruso. I think he got the captaincy taken off him. It was given to Rickson, I believe, and he seemed to get an uplift in performance from that just by not having that responsibility on him. Is that a viewpoint you can anyway kind of agree on or see from?
No. No, I don't think so either. I think, the thing with Amoruso, it basically led to his departure from the club. He was a very different type of player. It was actually Ferguson who got the captaincy from him when Amoruso had it stripped. Amoruso had a series of poor performances. It was different from what's happening with Tav. I think part of the problem some people have with Tav is he's not particularly demonstrative. He's not a screamer and shouter. He's not that type of personality. And I think when things aren't going well, some in the support are looking for that. They're looking for somebody who's going to, roll their sleeves up and start pumping their fist and shouting at people. And none of us know what's going on behind closed doors. But I think it's telling that every manager that we've had keeps Tav as the captain.
Yeah.
I think that tells us something.
Steven Gerrard knew a thing or two about being captain, and he kept him on as his captain, so absolutely. I guess that says something.
Yeah, and Van Bronckhorst kept him, Beale kept him, we'll see what the next manager does, but, I think that tells us something about his personality, his standing at the club. As I said, I think we take a lot of his stuff for granted. As Iain said there, the return as a fullback is astonishing. And again, who's better than him? I don't know. And I certainly wouldn't trust the club just now to go out and spend money to replace him. That would certainly make me nervous. From what I understand of Tavernier, he has, he's gone native. He's settled here. He intends to spend the rest of his life here. He's not looking for a move to the Premiership. He's not looking for a move to Saudi Arabia. He wants to play for Rangers until his career ends. That says something about him as well. No, I don't think so. I think stripping him of the captaincy, particularly when there was no manager in place, that wasn't going to happen. Davis was not going to do that. I don't think that would have been a smart move. I'm not convinced the issue is with the captaincy. I don't think that's the problem. In the end, Tavernier can't make Dessers faster. He just can't do that. He can't make Lammers a better player than he is. That's not, he can cajole the midfield. He can improve his own game, but there's a limit to what he can do as captain. And in the end, he didn't buy these players. He's not responsible for them being at the club. He's not responsible for the decisions that were made in the summer. I just don't think that would have been I don't think it would have been a smart move. I think it would have been counterproductive, frankly.
Ian, John mentioned there about we as fans kind of want to see our captain screaming and shouting, but is that really what the modern captain does? If I think about captains in, big teams or other teams in the league or even down south, you don't see many captains screaming and shouting now, a la Richard Gough or in years gone by. Do we place a bit too much importance on the captain? There's teams down south where their club captain doesn't even play. He sits on the bench and they have a club captain and on-field captain. So is it maybe a case that we overemphasise the role of the captain?
Yeah, I think the modern game is all about the sort of leadership group, isn't it? So you have 4 or 5 sort of strong personalities within the squad that are experienced and have, know what's expected, and they are the ones who, are the sort of players' liaison with the coaching staff and with the wider club, I suppose. And I think the club captain thing is more of a figurehead thing in most countries. I mean, I think so in Scotland and in England to an extent. It's more important than it is in the rest of Europe, but still, we've moved on a bit from the days of Richard Gough or Terry Butcher or John Gregg or whatever. That one single individual screaming his head off and threatening players almost, they have to play better. It just doesn't work in the modern game, and it's not part of the modern game anymore. So I think there's a lot of emphasis put on the captain that is probably unnecessary, or a lot of expectations, I suppose, from fans that are unnecessary. So yeah, I think you're right. That is how where we are now. I think we've moved on a bit from that sort of single figure is all important to the club.
Yeah, John, another player I wanted to speak about was Abdullah Sima. I thought again he looked like our most threatening forward player. I think he's now got 5 goals in the last 6 games, I think it is. So it's great to see him contributing. But is it a concern for you, and is it another kind of damning indictment on our summer spend that he looks like a best outfield player that we've recruited, but he's not actually our player?
We were saying that to some people earlier on today as we were watching the game and we were texting. It is ironic that of the kind of 4 forward players that we brought in the summer, he's the one that seems to have found a bit of form. It's really pleasing because I have to say I thought he was awful when he first came. I couldn't figure out why we'd bought him, or brought him into the club even. We didn't buy him, but I just thought he was really poor. He looked fast, and he was tall, but I couldn't see much else. But to be fair, he's been the pick of the bunch recently. It's a low bar. It's fairly confident any of the players that we sold in the summer, if we'd hung on to them, they'd be the pick of the bunch just now. But it's a low bar. But no, look, he's doing his job. He was arguably the only player who got close to pass marks on Thursday night. Despite his limitations, I thought he at least kept working. He kept trying. It wasn't always happening, but he wasn't hiding. And I thought again today, he took his goal well. Nice finish. And he seems to be playing himself into some form, which is great because no one else up front is. I'm pleased with Seema. I'm pleased he seems to be doing what's required. Truth is, we don't have a lot of options up front just now. If he can keep that form, he's going to keep his place because there isn't really anybody else to bring in just now. There isn't really anyone else to replace him. The fact he's not our player, I don't know. I mean, from what I gather, he hasn't getting in the Brighton team. I think he's a player they've brought in, and for whatever reason they've decided he isn't right for them. He spent pretty much his entire career out on loan. I guess he might be available in the summer if we want him. Although I imagine that it will be the irony if he ends up turning into a blinding player and having a cracking season, we probably won't be able to afford him, and he'll go somewhere else. But he's our player just now, a bit like Tillman last year. He's our player just now. If he can deliver on the park for a season, well, that's fine. Let's just be grateful for that. But it is the irony of it wasn't lost on me today, and kind of sums things up a bit just now, doesn't it? That he's the one of the 4 that we brought in the summer to play up front, and he's the one that looks like the most likely.
Yeah. Iain, John made the comparison there to Tillman in terms of he's a player on loan that's doing really well. Is he? Obviously, we don't know what finances would be involved in potentially keeping him, but if that was an option, is that something you think the club should be exploring?
I think we're maybe getting a wee bit ahead of ourselves at the moment. I mean, in terms of thinking about signing him, I mean, yeah, he's looking okay. Let's see if he's at the end of the season if we still think that. I'm not saying he wouldn't, but I think there'd be a lot of money involved, to be honest. Just the fact that he's in the Premier League, playing for one of the sort of more successful clubs, and I think Brighton are pretty good at getting good money for their players. So I don't think we'd get him on the cheap. So he's looked good, and I just don't think we would want to at this stage be necessarily committing ourselves to anything. I think, again, when the new manager comes in, I suppose they're going to have their own ideas as well. So hopefully they'll come in with a scouting network of their own that goes beyond what we currently have, and maybe we can broaden that out a wee bit and look for some other alternatives as well. But yeah, I mean, I agree that he's doing well, but I think we're maybe a wee bit early in terms of snapping him up on a permanent deal.
Yeah, I think so. I think it probably would be fairly costly if we were to try and sign him. So we'll see how that works out in the summer.
He's got he's about 18 months left in his contract with Brighton. So the chances are Brighton will make a decision in the summer, which is probably they'll want to try and sell him and recoup something in the summer. It seems, unless, as I said, something changes dramatically, Brian, I don't think he's making the Brighton first team anytime soon. So I suspect they'll look to get what they can from him this summer and try and make a permanent move rather than see him leave for nothing in 12 months' time. So, the ball just is in our court, but as Ian says, I wouldn't be committing to it just yet.
I think we had the same discussions about loan players like Lassana Coulibaly. We were all quite keen to sign him early on, and it didn't kind of pan out that way for the rest of the season. So I think Ian makes a good point in terms of it might be better just to hold off and see how consistent he is. Next thing we obviously need to cover is the search for a new manager. Now, there's not been much news over the weekend. Like the latest news we had on Friday that Alex and Dougie discussed, well, that we were told that Frank Lampard is no longer in contention for that role, and it seems to be based on kind of rumours and online speculation that the rumoured front runners appear to be Muscat, Clement and Knudsen. I'll ask you first, Ian, do either of the three of them excite you? Are they managers you know much about, or would you have a preference in terms of those three names?
Well, I know about them. I mean, none of them. When there was a sort of rumoured 4 or 5 names that came out last week, I have to say none of them really filled me with great excitement. But at the same time, I don't really know who would have done it that would be within our sort of our realistic target range. So, Muscat, I don't know. I mean, I feel that we're looking at him because he's a former player and because he's sort of followed a similar career path to the former Celtic manager. There's no reason to think that he's just going to replicate exactly what he did at Celtic with us, just because he's sort of managed the same clubs and he's Australian and he's followed the same sort of career path. So I don't know an awful lot about his, what he's all about. I would hope that if he was appointed, then that people would have looked into it a bit more than I have done so far. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I would like to think that would be the case. And the other two, Clement, he's probably the one that I know most about because he's been relatively successful in Belgium. And I suppose you could say, well, it's only Belgium, but then it's only Scotland, so we shouldn't really be rolling somebody out on that basis. But I mean, the most important thing for me is that we need somebody who is a proven winner and somebody who knows what it means to win and knows how important it is to win. Now, I don't know how all these guys are their makeup is, but Clement has obviously been a winner, but and so have the other two, I think, as well. But it's just all about their. I don't really know enough about all of them to say he's my favourite. None of them are standing out as a favourite. I think Clement is probably the one that stands above the other two that are up there. But I think it's just more important that when they come in, they understand what is expected of them, and they can try and transmit that to the players. Because I don't think a lot of these players we've got just now really understand that, despite what they must have picked up on a few clues by now, but they don't seem to have picked that up. So hopefully you can get somebody who'll inspire the players to reach greater heights. So that's my most important factor there. But I wouldn't say any of them exactly excite me, but then I wasn't really expecting to be excited, to be honest. So at this age, I can't really cope with excitement anyway. So,
was there any kind of names that were perhaps more kind of loosely rumoured that would have excited you, or any ones that haven't been mentioned that you would have liked to have seen as kind of possibly be in the frame?
Is Mourinho available? I don't know. I mean, that's the kind of fantasy idea of somebody who could come in, but no. I mean, to be honest with you, we're in a position where what I don't want to be doing is taking risks on unknown quantities. So somebody who's maybe had 2 or 3 good months playing, managing a team in the English Championship, and is a promising coach for the future, I don't think we can take a risk on that. We've done that with Beale, even though there was a sort of bit of background with him and he knew the club, but I just don't think that was the right move to make at that stage, and it proved that it really wasn't the right move to make. I don't want to do that again. So it's more about who I don't want than who I do want, really, in some ways. I have a good idea of what I didn't want, and I think probably most of those candidates at the moment, Muscat, I think we're only probably looking at him because he's a former Rangers player. Otherwise, we wouldn't be looking at him. The rest of them, don't fall into the category of I wouldn't want them. But
yeah, I'm a bit like yourself. It feels like there's no standout candidate where you go, yes, he's the one I want. It feels like it could be kind of any one of the 3, and we'd probably all be pretty happy with it, but maybe not ecstatic and lining Edmondson Drive to welcome them, as it were. John, what about you? What's your feeling on the new manager situation in terms of the 3 names that I mentioned there?
I mean, like you guys, I wouldn't claim to have any deep knowledge of any of them. I'm aware of them. Actually, Clement was probably the one I was least aware of, unlike Iain. I was probably least aware of him until fairly recently, and when I started to hear his name. I'm still scarred by Le Guen, I have to be honest with you. I still bear the scars of Le Guen. I bought fully into Le Guen. I drank the Kool-Aid, as the Americans say, and that collapsing after 6 months, and even then, even when it did collapse, I was still in the camp of we should get rid of Barry Ferguson and Chris Boyd, and Walter Smith comes in and we're in a European final 18 months later. So it's I guess really what I'm saying is, like, I'm the last guy you should ask, because what do I know about these things? But you've asked me, so I'll tell you. Unlike you, I'm probably more comfortable with Muscat. I think if he hadn't played for Rangers, we'd take it a bit more seriously. I think if we're looking at a guy who's won the league in Japan, and from what I gather, Japanese club football is of a higher standard than Scottish club football just now. But he's won the league in Japan. He's won the league in Australia. He's Anglophile. He speaks the language. He's lived in the UK. He's played football in the UK. I can see why he ticks a number of boxes, and the fact that he has actually been at the club, albeit for a fairly short time, is probably, at least he has an understanding of how the game works here. He understands that already. The other 2, culturally, I think both of them speak very good English. I don't think there'll be any challenges on that front. But I think culturally they were going to have to adjust to just how it is here. They're going to have to adjust to coming to a league where pretty much every team bar one goes into it, and the intention is not to lose. They're not there to go toe to toe. They're not there to try and beat us. They're there to try not to lose to us, and it's a kind of different type of management and player that's required. The boy is it Bodo Glimt thing? I mean, I know they've I've read a couple of things about them. They're quite a success story in Norwegian football. They've had some, really eye-catching results over the last few years. It is remarkable what they've done there. How much of that is down to the manager, how much of that's down to the structure behind them and how they're run? I guess it's a bit of both. Could he replicate that outside of Norway? I really don't know. It does concern me a little bit. Clement, I wouldn't be unhappy if it was him that got it, and likewise, I probably wouldn't be unhappy if it was Muscat. Whoever's coming in, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You're willing to see, but like Iain said, it's not an obvious person we're overlooking. I think when this whole thing begins, I tend to look and see, okay, is there anybody in the league just now? Is there anyone in the league we're in that you would look at? Now, it's not going to be McInnes. McInnes has burnt his boats there. Oddly enough, I was a little surprised that nobody, and I've literally seen nobody suggest the manager of St Mirren, who were against tonight, who's, actually, St Mirren are currently joint at the same points as us, and actually having a very good season, and absolutely nobody suggested him. I think he would be a hugely underwhelming appointment. I can't see the support getting terribly excited, but that is probably the best of what's there. At Martindale, I think, comes with too much baggage, so I don't think there's anyone obvious that's being missed just now that we would look initially. We're not going to go for the Hearts manager. We're not going to go for the Hibs manager. We're not going to go for the Aberdeen manager. And these are perhaps people we would have looked at in the past as kind of obvious people to come in and maybe step up into the Rangers job. So there is nobody that's kind of jumping out and to me either. I have to hope that the board have spent a lot more time and given us a lot more thought than I have. Whoever comes in, he's still going to have to work with the same players. Whoever comes in is still going to have to figure out a system that will work with these guys. Now, I think when we get our squad back, I think when Cantwell's fit again, when hopefully Lawrence is fit again, perhaps Danilo is fit again, perhaps Matondo, when you get these guys fit, then it certainly gives us more options. It gives us more options in terms of how the style of play we can make. But I'm quietly hopeful that the fact that we're not hearing anything, the fact that there's no leaks coming out, is a good sign. Is that the people are working away diligently in the background and things have been done correctly. But I don't know. And truth be told, I've no more insight into this than you do. Probably less.
You mentioned there, John, that whoever comes in, he's going to need to work with the squad that he's got in the main. Now, the one thing all three of these names seem to have in common, based on what I've read, is that they all like to play a kind of fairly high pressing, attacking style of play. Do you think we've got the squad capable of playing that style, or is this going to be new manager comes in and we're going to need another squad overhaul to bring in players that suit his style of play?
Well, I mean, you have to assume that the directors are having that conversation with these guys. How is it you like to play? What kind of players? This is the style, this is the league you're in, this is what was expected of you. So you have to assume these things are discussed. I think most modern managers, most successful managers, play that type of football. That seems to be the style just now that gets the best results. Certainly the style I think that supporters prefer. Are we capable of doing it? We were doing it until fairly recently. A couple of seasons ago, not only were we doing it, but we're doing it quite successfully. And for some reason, this season we've stopped doing it, and we don't do it at all. We seem incapable of doing it. Our forward players just don't have only some of them don't have the mobility. Aren't that type of player. I don't know if they're capable of doing it, but I think as a squad, we should be capable of doing it. I think there's enough guys in that squad that we should be able to do it. But whoever we bring in, Brian's going to want to bring in their own players. There will be changes. I think, accept that. You cannot expect somebody to come in and say, right, okay, you know what, you don't get to bring in your own players. You don't get to make changes. There will be some changes in January. There'll be more changes in the summer, whoever we bring in. That's just the nature of the game.
I don't actually think our squad is as bad as most people think it is. I think we do have the core of decent players. I think John mentioned most of them there who could make a difference. It's just getting the best out of those players. That's what's going to be the most important job for whoever the new manager is, and whatever his tactical approach or how he sets up his teams is almost secondary in some ways to how he can get the best out of these players. So what I hope will happen is that the new manager is not going to be so stringent in the way that they operate, that they say, right, well, this is how I play, and if you can't play like that, then you're just going to either have to go or I'm going to play you anyway, and then you get the worst out of the players. So yes, he has to have a defined style, but at the same time, he needs to be realistic about what he's got available. I don't know whether our players are capable of playing that kind of style of football either, because we haven't really seen them trying it. Now, have they not tried it because we've changed our approach under Van Bronckhorst and Beale this season? Or is it because the players that we've got, despite how we want to play, how these coaches want to play, aren't capable of doing it and just aren't doing what they're told to do? So I don't know. I suppose we'll find out soon enough. But I don't think the players. Some there are players obviously that I would happily see go tomorrow. But I do think there is the core of a decent squad there that we're just not getting the best out of for whatever reason that is. I don't know. Hopefully that's what the new manager is going to bring, whoever he is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who the new manager is and then kind of what style of play he brings. I'll finish up on the last point with you, Iain, is obviously we're heading into an international break now. Usually we all dread the international break, but is this now the perfect time for us for an international break? And how crucial is it that we get a new manager in early during the break to give him as much time as possible to work with the group before our next game against Hibs at Ibrox?
Well, it is handy. If we are aiming to get a manager in the short term, then having a little break so it doesn't have to be like tomorrow is quite useful. I actually thought when they sort of announced that Stephen Davis was going to be the interim manager and they had this sort of backroom team as well, I actually thought that they were maybe looking ahead to keep them in place until maybe the January transfer window, and then maybe look at replacing them then, just giving them a run of games until then, and then making that decision. It doesn't look as if that's going to happen, and that's probably a good thing. But I think, the international break, much as I can't abide it, is probably coming at a good time for us.
Yeah, and also we've got quite a few players to come back from injuries, so hopefully once we come out of the international break, the squad's looking in a lot better shape in terms of players returning from injury.
Possibly. Who knows? But I mean, the way things are going, they'll probably come back with more injuries from the international break, won't they?
Well, that would just be our luck right about now. Right, I think we'll call it a time there. All that's left for me to do is thank my guests. Iain, thanks as always.
Thank you.
John, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks very much, Brian.
Thank you. As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher. And we'd ask that you leave a rating on your preferred podcasting app. We'll be back after the international break to preview the home game against Hibs. And hopefully we'll also be discussing our new manager then as well. Until next time, bye for now.